The bullet tore through her back, and Eliza Whitmore understood she was dying. Her knees hit Wyoming dust, and she couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the blood spreading warm beneath her ribs. They'd caught her. Barrett's men would take the ledger, burn it, and her brother's grave would stay unmarked forever. Another shot cracked overhead, and hoofbeats thundered closer. Then different hoofbeats, faster, from the ridge above. A man's voice cut through her fading vision. "Stay down." One clean gunshot. Silence. Strong hands lifted her, and the world went black. But she was moving, away from them, away from death. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and stay with me until the end of this story. Comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. Eliza woke to pain, not the sharp crack of the bullet that had passed into memory, but the deep, grinding ache of torn flesh trying to knit itself back together. She tried to sit, and her body refused. The sound that escaped her throat was animal. "Don't." A man's voice, low, steady. She forced her eyes open. Rough-hewn ceiling beams, a stone fireplace with embers still glowing, the smell of wood smoke and something medicinal, sharp enough to cut through the fog in her skull. "Where?" "My ranch, outside Dry Hollow." He moved into view. Older than she'd expected, maybe 40, maybe more. Weathered face, gray threading through dark hair, eyes that had seen things they didn't talk about. "You've been out 2 days." 2 days. Eliza's hand moved instinctively to her side and found thick bandaging beneath a man's shirt 3 sizes too large. The ledger. Where was the ledger? "Looking for this?" He held up the leather satchel, blood-stained, torn at one corner, but whole. She tried to lunge for it, and her vision whited out. When the pain receded enough to think, she was flat on her back again, breathing in shallow gasps. "Easy." He set the satchel on the table beside her cot, within reach, but not touching. "I didn't read it. Figured if you were willing to die for it, wasn't my business to pry." "Then why—" She had to stop, catch her breath. "Why help me?" He was silent for a long moment, stirring something in a pot over the fire. "Because 4 men chasing 1 bleeding woman isn't a fair fight." He ladled broth into a tin cup. "And because I know what Barrett mining does to people who cross them." That made her focus, made her forget the pain long enough to really look at him. "You know Barrett?" "Everyone in 3 territories knows Barrett." He brought the cup over, sat in a chair someone had pulled up beside the cot. "They own the silver. They own the land. They own the law." His eyes met hers. "But they don't own me." "They will if you keep me here." "Maybe." "This isn't maybe. They'll—" "I know what they'll do." He held out the cup. "Now drink this before you tear your stitches arguing with me." She wanted to refuse, wanted to grab the satchel and run, never mind that she couldn't stand, couldn't walk, couldn't make it to the door, let alone to the county line. But the broth smelled like actual food, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. She drank. It was good. Simple, but good. Beef and herbs and something else she couldn't name. "Who are you?" she asked when the cup was empty. "Rowan Cade." "That's a name, not an answer." The corner of his mouth twitched. Might have been the start of a smile. "Ran cattle here for 8 years. Before that, I scouted for the Union during the war. Before that, I did things I don't talk about." He took the empty cup. "Your turn." She should lie, should give him a false name, a false story, something that wouldn't tie him to what was coming. But he'd pulled a bullet out of her back and asked for nothing, and the least she owed him was truth. "Eliza Whitmore. I was the bookkeeper at Barrett's main office in Cheyenne." "Was." "I found things I wasn't supposed to find." "The ledger." She nodded. Even that small movement cost her. "What's in it?" Proof. Her voice hardened. Land deeds forged to seize homesteads. Payroll records showing workers who were never paid. Payments to the sheriff, the judge, the territorial governor's office. She paused. And a list of men who complained about conditions in the mines. 23 names, all marked transferred. But there were no transfer records, no new postings. They just vanished. Rowan's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Your brother's name on that list? She went very still. How did you? You said, they'll burn me, not they'll kill me. Someone who's already lost everything says it like that. He stood, moved back to the fire. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Help me finish this. You can't finish anything until you can stand. Then help me stand. You'd tear open in 3 steps. I don't care. I do. He turned to face her. Because if you die on my floor, they get away with all of it. The land, the murders, everything. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. So you're going to lie there and heal, and when you can walk, we'll talk about what comes next. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to rage that every day she waited was another day Barrett consolidated power, destroyed evidence, silenced witnesses. But the pain wouldn't let her. The weakness wouldn't let her. All she could do was lie there and hate it. They'll come looking for me, she said finally. I know. They'll come here. Probably. And you're going to, what, fight them? If I have to. He poured himself coffee from a pot that had been sitting too long. But fighting's not usually the answer. Then what is? He took a sip, grimaced at the bitterness. Outlasting them. The fever came that night. Eliza felt it building in her blood, a heat that had nothing to do with the fireplace. Her skin went slick with sweat, and the room tilted sideways, and she heard herself talking, but couldn't understand the words. Rowan's hands were cool on her forehead. Thomas, she said, or thought she said. Thomas, they shot you. They buried you where no one would find you. I'm not Thomas, Rowan's voice, cutting through the delirium. You're safe. Stay with me. He was 22. He wanted to be a teacher. He went west because they promised good wages, honest work. Her words tumbled out in fragments. He wrote letters, said the mine was dangerous, said men were dying, said the foreman threatened anyone who complained. Easy now. And then the letters stopped, and I knew, but I couldn't prove it until I saw the ledger, saw his name marked transferred, 3 days after his last letter, and I knew they'd killed him. The sobs hurt worse than the bullet wound. Rowan didn't tell her to stop crying, didn't offer empty comfort. He just sat there in the chair beside her cot, keeping watch while the fever burned through her and the truth poured out in pieces. When she finally went quiet, drifting towards something that might have been sleep, he spoke. My brother died in the war. Andersonville prison. Starved to death while officers on both sides knew what was happening and did nothing. His voice was steady, factual. So I understand what it means to lose someone to men who value profit over lives. She wanted to respond, but the fever had her again. The room spun. Voices echoed. Thomas's laugh, bright and young and gone forever. And through it all, Rowan's presence, constant, unmoving, like a sentinel standing between her and the dark. She woke to daylight streaming through a window she hadn't noticed before. The fever had broken. Her head felt clearer. Her body still screamed with every breath, but the screaming was quieter now. Rowan was asleep in the chair, his coffee cup empty in his lap, his rifle propped against the wall within arm's reach. He'd stayed all night. Eliza watched him for a long moment, studied the lines carved deep around his eyes, the scars half hidden by his collar. The way, even in sleep, his shoulders stayed tense like he was ready to wake fighting. This was a man who'd seen war, who'd survived it, who'd walked away and tried to build something quiet. And she'd brought the war back to his door. "You're awake." She startled. His eyes were open now, watching her with the same steady intensity. "How long was I?" "Fever broke about an hour ago." He stood, stretched muscles that had gone stiff. "You talked a lot." Shame burned her cheeks. "What did I say?" "Enough." He moved to the stove, started working on something that smelled like bacon. "Your brother, the foreman who threatened him. A man named Garrett, who runs Barrett's enforcement division." He cracked eggs into a pan. "And someone called Madeline, who you kept apologizing to." "My sister." Eliza's throat tightened. "She's back east. She doesn't know I took the ledger. Doesn't know I ran." Pause. "Doesn't know Thomas is dead." "You planning to tell her?" "When I have proof that holds up in court. When I can name his killers." Her hands clenched in the blanket. "Not before." Rowan nodded like that made sense. Like waiting to destroy your whole life until you had evidence was reasonable. He brought her a plate. Bacon, eggs, bread toasted over the fire. Real food. She tried to sit up and gasped at the pull in her side. "Here." He helped her, careful not to jar the wound, and positioned a rolled blanket behind her back for support. "Better?" "Better." They ate in silence. She was hungrier than she'd thought. The food was simple, but cooked with care, and after days of fever and broth, it tasted like a feast. "Why are you doing this?" she asked when her plate was empty. Rowan set his own plate aside. "Told you, wasn't a fair fight." "That's not a reason. That's an excuse." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You ever been to war, Eliza?" "No." "It changes you. Makes you see things different." He stared at something she couldn't see, something in his memory. "I spent 4 years fighting for a cause I believed in. Saw good men die for it. Saw bad men profit from it." His eyes refocused on her. "And when it was over, I came out here thinking I could leave all that behind, build something, be something other than a soldier." "And?" "And I did. For 8 years I ran cattle and fixed fences and lived quiet." His jaw tightened. "But quiet doesn't mean blind. I see what Barrett does. I see the homesteaders forced off their land. I see the miners who go down into those shafts and don't come back up." He stood, walked to the window. "I see it, and I tell myself it's not my fight. That I did my fighting. That someone else will stand up." "But no one does." "No one does." He turned back to her. "Until a woman, half dead from a bullet, comes crashing into my life with proof that might actually change something." Pause. "So maybe this isn't about you. Maybe it's about me finding a fight worth having." Before Eliza could respond, a sound cut through the morning air. Hoofbeats. Rowan's hand went to his rifle in one smooth motion. He crossed to the window, stayed to the side, looked out, careful. "How many?" Eliza's voice came out steadier than she felt. 3 riders, coming up from the south road." His eyes narrowed. "They're not Barrett's men." "How do you know?" "Barrett's men ride matched horses. These are ranchers' mounts, local." That didn't make her feel better. "What do they want?" "Let's find out." He checked the rifle's load. "Stay quiet. Stay down." He opened the door before they could knock. 3 men stood on his porch, weathered, cautious, armed, but not aggressive. The oldest stepped forward. "Rowan." "Jim. Heard you had some trouble a few nights back. Gunshots up in Red Canyon." Heard the same. Rowan's voice gave nothing away. Sheriff's asking questions. Says Barrett Mining had a clerk go missing. Says there might be foul play involved. Sheriff says a lot of things. Jim's eyes flickered to the house behind Rowan. You know anything about that? I know I mind my own business on my own land. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got. The three men exchanged looks. The youngest spoke up, his voice tight. Look, Rowan, we're not here to cause trouble. But Barrett's offering a reward for information. $500. And some of us... He trailed off. Some of you have families to feed. Rowan's voice softened slightly. I understand that, Cole, but I can't help you. Can't or won't. Both. Jim stepped closer, lowered his voice. Whatever you're doing, Cade, stop. Barrett doesn't forgive. They don't forget. You think you're protecting someone? You're just painting a target on your own back. Wouldn't be the first time. This ain't the war. This is business. And business doesn't care about honor or doing right. It cares about winning. Then I guess we'll see who wins. The men left, but Eliza knew they'd be back, or others would. $500 was more than most ranchers made in a year, and desperation made people do things they'd regret later. Rowan closed the door, locked it, checked the windows. They'll tell the sheriff they were here, Eliza said. Probably. And the sheriff will tell Barrett. Definitely. So what do we do? Rowan looked at her, really looked at her. We get you strong enough to ride, and then we figure out how to take down a mining empire with nothing but a ledger and a prayer. She almost laughed. It was insane, impossible. But she was alive when she should be dead. And sometimes impossible was all you had left. Over the next 3 days, Eliza learned to walk again. The first attempt lasted 5 steps before her legs gave out, and Rowan caught her. The second attempt made it to the door. The third made it outside into air that tasted like sage and freedom and danger all mixed together. Each time it hurt. Each time she pushed through it. Because every day she stayed weak was another day Barrett consolidated his position. Another day the truth stayed buried. Rowan watched her practice with the same steady patience he seemed to bring to everything. Never pushing, never coddling, just there when she fell. You're stubborn, he said on the 4th day, as she made it all the way to the corral fence and back without stopping. You sound surprised. I'm not. Just making an observation. She leaned against the fence, catching her breath. The wound still pulled tight when she moved wrong, but the worst of the pain had dulled to a manageable ache. Tell me about Dry Hollow, she said. What about it? The people. Who can we trust? Rowan was quiet for a moment. Depends what you mean by trust. I mean, who won't sell us out to Barrett for $500? Short list. He started counting on his fingers. Doc Henley. He's the one who came out here to stitch you up. Wouldn't talk even if Barrett put a gun to his head. Martha Quinn runs the boarding house. She lost her husband to a mine collapse 3 years back. Knows what Barrett is. Pause. And that's about it. What about the sheriff? Bought and paid for. Has been since he took office. The judge? Worse than the sheriff. At least the sheriff pretends to care about justice. Judge doesn't even bother. Eliza felt something cold settle in her stomach. Then how do we go over their heads. Federal marshals, territorial governor, someone Barrett hasn't gotten to yet. You think there is someone he hasn't gotten to? Has to be. No one's that thorough. She wanted to believe him, but she'd seen the ledger, seen the breadth of Barrett's corruption. It went deeper than she'd imagined, wider than she'd feared. What if there isn't? She asked quietly. What if everyone's compromised? Rowan met her eyes. Then we make enough noise that someone who isn't compromised has to pay attention. How? Haven't figured that part out yet. The honesty was almost worse than false confidence would have been. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals in the afternoon heat. Eliza watched it hunt, watched it wait, watched it strike when the moment was right. My brother wrote me once about the mine, she said. Said the foreman kept a second set of books, real numbers, real casualty counts. Said if anyone ever found those books, Barrett would hang. Rowan straightened. Where are they? Thomas didn't know, just that they existed. That's not much to go on. It's more than we had 5 minutes ago. He almost smiled at that. You always this optimistic when you're bleeding and hunted? You always this calm when you're sheltering fugitives? Seems we're both doing things outside our comfort. They stood there in the afternoon sun, two people who'd had quiet lives interrupted by violence and choice. Two people who could have walked away and didn't. The hawk dove, came up with prey. I'm strong enough to ride, Eliza said. No, you're not. I'm strong enough to try. That's not the same thing. It'll have to be. She turned to face him fully. Because those men who came here, they're scared, desperate. And scared, desperate people make mistakes. We need to move before they make one that gets us both killed. Rowan studied her. Where would we go? Cheyenne. I still have contacts at the mining office. People who might talk if they knew someone was listening. Cheyenne's 3 days' ride. Hard country between here and there. Then we'd better leave soon. Eliza, I'm not asking permission, Rowan. I'm telling you what I'm doing. You can come with me, or you can stay here and wait for Barrett's next move. Her voice steadied. But I'm not hiding anymore. I'm done running. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed, the sound of a man who knew he was about to make a terrible decision and was making it anyway. We leave before dawn. 2 horses, light provisions, and if you tear those stitches open, don't blame me. Relief and fear tangled together in her chest. Thank you. Thank me when we're not dead. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. She lay in the cot Rowan had given her, staring at ceiling beams she'd memorized, listening to the night sounds outside, coyotes in the distance, wind through sage, the creak of old wood settling, and underneath it all, a question she couldn't answer. What happened when you bet everything on a truth no one wanted to hear? You awake? Rowan's voice from the other room. He'd given her his bedroom, taken the chair by the fire for himself. Another kindness she didn't deserve. Yeah. Can't sleep either? No. She heard him move, saw his shadow cross the doorway. Mind if I come in? It's your house. He sat in the chair beside her cot, the same chair he'd spent 2 nights in while she burned with fever. In the dim light from the banked fire, his face was all shadows and edges. You scared? He asked. She could lie, should lie, maintain the brave face. But what was the point? Terrified. Good. That surprised her. Good? Means you understand what we're up against. He leaned back. Scared keeps you alive. Stupid gets you killed. Which one are you? Bit of both, probably. She laughed. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. Fleeing across Wyoming territory with a bullet wound and a ledger and a cowboy she'd known less than a week. It was too much. Rowan smiled, actually smiled. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less worn. What's funny? He asked. Everything. Nothing. She wiped her eyes. A month ago, I was keeping books and eating lunch at the same restaurant every day, and thinking the most dangerous thing in my life was whether my landlady would raise the rent. Pause. Now I'm planning to ride into Cheyenne and accuse the territory's richest man of murder. When you put it like that, it does sound a bit mad. A bit? Completely insane. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment.
Rowan? Yeah? Why did you really save me? And don't give me the line about fair fights. I want the truth. He was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I told you my brother died in the war.
You did. What I didn't tell you is that I could have saved him. Could have gotten him transferred out of the prison camp. I had connections, favors I could have called in. His voice went hollow. But I was fighting, important battles, strategic positions. And I told myself his suffering was for the cause, that we'd all sacrificed, that he'd understand. Rowan, he died 3 weeks before the war ended. 3 weeks. His hands clenched. And I've spent every day since wondering what would have happened if I just made the choice to save one person instead of trying to save a cause. Understanding hit her like a physical blow. So, when you saw me, I saw a choice, a simple one. Save someone or let them die. He met her eyes. This time I chose right. Eliza felt tears prickling and blinked them back. I'm not your brother. I know. And you don't owe him anything. He wouldn't want... I know that too. He stood. But maybe I owe it to myself. To the man I'm trying to be, instead of the man I was. He moved toward the door, then paused. Get some sleep. Dawn comes early. Rowan? He turned back. Thank you. For choosing right. He nodded once. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the night and the choice she'd made and the dawn that was coming, whether they were ready or not. Eliza closed her eyes, thought of Thomas, thought of the 22 other names in the ledger, thought of all the people Barrett had ground beneath his boot in the name of profit. And she thought of Rowan Cade, a man who'd walked away from war and found it waiting for him anyway. Tomorrow they'd ride. Tomorrow they'd face whatever came. But tonight, for the first time since the bullet tore through her back, Eliza Whitmore felt something she hadn't expected to feel again. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, stubborn hope. The kind that got people killed, or the kind that changed everything. Dawn came cold and unforgiving. Eliza saddled her horse, Rowan's spare mare, a steady roan with kind eyes, and felt the wound pull with every movement. She didn't complain. Complaining wouldn't change anything. Rowan loaded provisions into saddlebags with the efficiency of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Dried meat, hardtack, canteens filled at the well. His rifle went into the scabbard. His revolver stayed on his hip. You know how to shoot? He asked. I know which end the bullet comes out of. That's not the same thing. It'll have to be. He handed her a small derringer. 2 shots, point-blank range only. Don't use it unless you absolutely have to. She tucked it into her coat pocket. The weight felt foreign, final. They rode out as the sun broke over the eastern ridge, turning the sky the color of blood and promises. The first 2 hours passed in silence. Eliza focused on staying upright, on breathing through the pain, on not thinking about the 3 days of hard riding ahead. Rowan rode slightly ahead, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. We're being followed, he said quietly. Eliza's heart kicked. How many? Can't tell yet. Maybe 2 riders. Staying back about a mile. Barrett's men? Or bounty hunters? Word's out about the reward. She touched the satchel strapped across her chest. The ledger. The only proof that mattered. What do we do? Keep riding. See if they make a move. They did.
An hour later, the riders closed the distance. Rowan pulled up, turned his horse to face them. "Stay behind me," he said. The two men who approached weren't Barrett's enforcers. They were younger, hungrier.
The kind of men who saw $500 and stopped thinking about consequences. "That's far enough," Rowan called out. They stopped. The taller one grinned. "Just passing through, mister. No need for hostility." "Then pass through somewhere else." "Funny thing, though, we're heading to Cheyenne, too. Seems like we might be going the same direction." "We're not." The shorter one, barely 20, with eyes that couldn't hold still, let his hand drift toward his gun. "Barrett Mining's looking for a woman. Clerk who stole some papers. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "I know you're making a mistake." "Mistake's worth $500. Rowan's voice went flat. "It's worth a grave if you keep talking." The tall one's grin widened. 2 against 1. I like those odds. "You're forgetting someone." Eliza urged her horse forward, ignoring Rowan's sharp look. Her hand found the derringer in her pocket. "I'm right here," she said, "and I'm telling you to turn around and ride away." The young one laughed. "Lady, you can barely sit your horse." "That's true, but I can still pull a trigger." "So can we, and we're a lot faster." "Probably." Her voice stayed steady, even as her pulse hammered. "But you're assuming I care about dying, and I stopped caring about that the night they shot me in the back." That changed something in their faces. The laughter died. "So here's what's going to happen," Eliza continued. "You're going to ride back to whoever sent you, and you're going to tell them that Eliza Whitmore isn't hiding anymore, that she's coming to Cheyenne, that she's going to stand in front of the federal courthouse and read every name in this ledger until someone listens." She pulled the satchel around where they could see it. "And if Barrett wants to stop me, he can try. But he's going to have to kill me in broad daylight, in front of witnesses." The silence stretched. Then the tall one spat in the dust. "You're crazy." "Probably, but I'm crazy with proof." They looked at each other, looked at Rowan, who hadn't moved, whose hand rested easy on his rifle. Looked at Eliza, who looked half dead, but spoke like someone with nothing left to lose. The young one was the first to turn his horse. "This ain't worth it. $500. Ain't worth hanging for murder. You want to shoot a woman in the back, you do it. I'm out." They rode away. Eliza waited until they were out of sight before she let herself shake. Her hand cramped around the derringer she'd never intended to use. "That was stupid," Rowan said. "I know. You could have gotten us both killed." "I know. Don't do it again." "Can't promise that." He stared at her. Then something that might have been respect flickered across his face. "You meant it. About Cheyenne. About reading the names in public." "Every word." "That's not a plan. That's suicide." "You have a better idea?" He didn't answer. Because they both knew the truth. They didn't have a plan. They had hope and desperation and a ledger that might get them killed before anyone listened. They rode on. By midday, the pain in Eliza's side had gone from manageable to unbearable. She could feel the stitches pulling, could feel warmth spreading beneath the bandage that might have been blood. She didn't say anything. Rowan noticed anyway. "We're stopping." "We can't. Those men—" "We'll be back with more friends if you bleed out and fall off your horse." He guided them toward a cluster of cottonwoods near a dry creek bed. "Down, now." She dismounted, and her legs nearly buckled. Rowan caught her, helped her to a fallen log. "Let me see." "It's fine." "Eliza." She lifted her shirt with hands that trembled. The bandage was soaked through, red blooming dark against white cloth. Rowan swore quietly. "He tore the stitches." "How bad?" "Bad enough. He pulled clean bandages from his saddlebag. "This is going to hurt." It did. She bit down on her own hand to keep from screaming as he cleaned the wound, as he pressed the bleeding edges together, as he wrapped new bandages tight enough to hold. When he finished, she was breathing in shallow gasps and tasting copper. "We should go back," Rowan said. "No. You won't make it to Cheyenne like this. Then I'll die trying." "That's not noble. That's stupid." "Maybe they're the same thing." She forced herself to look at him. "My brother died in a mine shaft because he believed workers deserved safe conditions, because he believed someone would listen if he just spoke loud enough." Her voice cracked. "And no one listened. And they killed him. And they buried him where his own sister couldn't even find his grave to mourn." "Eliza, so if I die trying to make someone hear his name, trying to make someone pay for what they did, then at least I die for something that matters." Tears burned her eyes. "At least I'm not another person who knew the truth and stayed silent." Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he stood, checked their surroundings, came back. "There's a town about 10 miles south of here, Little Creek. I know a woman there who might help. Can we trust her? She hates Barrett more than you do." "That's not an answer." "It's the best I've got." Eliza tried to stand and gasped. The fresh bandages were already seeping. "I can't ride 10 miles. "You can. You will." He helped her up, his grip steady. "Because I didn't pull a bullet out of your back just to watch you quit now." "I'm not quitting." "Then prove it." She mounted her horse. Every movement was agony. Every breath was fire. But she stayed upright, and they rode toward Little Creek with the sun beating down and the shadows growing longer, and the knowledge that every mile was a victory they might not have tomorrow. They reached Little Creek as dusk fell. It wasn't much of a town, a trading post, a smithy, a church with a broken steeple, maybe 20 buildings total. But it had people, and people meant witnesses. And witnesses meant Barrett couldn't just kill them in the street. Maybe. Rowan led them to a house on the edge of town, small, weathered, garden out front that had gone to seed. He knocked. A woman opened the door, 50, maybe older, gray hair pulled back severe, eyes that assessed everything in one glance. "Rowan Cade. Didn't expect to see you again." "Hello, Sarah. You bring trouble to my door?" "Yes." She looked at Eliza, took in the pallor, the way she swayed in the saddle, the blood-soaked coat. "Get her inside before someone sees." Sarah's house was sparse, functional, a widow's economy written in every corner. She cleared the table with quick efficiency while Rowan helped Eliza down from her horse. On the table, face down. Eliza obeyed. The room spun. Sarah cut away the bandages Rowan had just applied, examined the wound with hands that had clearly done this before. "Who stitched this?" "Doc Henley. He did good work. She's the one who ruined it." Sarah's fingers probed the edges. Eliza bit back a scream. "Infection's starting. She needs rest. Real rest. Not riding across the territory like a damn fool." "I told her that." "Did you tell her she'll die if she keeps this up?" "Several times." Sarah looked at Eliza. "You deaf or just stupid?" "Stupid," Eliza managed. "Definitely stupid." "At least you're honest." Sarah started cleaning the wound with something that burned like hellfire. "What'd you do to earn Barrett's wrath?" "Stole proof he's been murdering workers." "That all?" "And forging land deeds. And bribing officials." Sarah's hands paused. "You have evidence?" "In the satchel." "Let me see." Rowan handed over the ledger. Sarah paged through it slowly, her expression never changing. But Eliza saw her hands tighten, saw her jaw clench. "My husband's name is in here," Sarah said quietly.
James Millbrook, listed as transferred 4 years ago. She looked up. But there was no transfer. He just never came home from the mine one day. And when I asked questions, the foreman said he'd run off. Said some men couldn't handle family responsibility. "I'm sorry," Eliza whispered. "Don't be sorry. Be alive long enough to make them pay." Sarah closed the ledger. "This goes public. Barrett hangs. Him and every man on his payroll." "That's the plan." "Plans don't survive contact with reality. You know that, right?" "I'm learning." Sarah returned to the wound. Her stitching was faster than Doc Henley's, but just as precise. She worked in silence, repairing the damage Eliza's stubbornness had caused. When she finished, she bandaged it properly. Tight, secure. "You stay here tonight, both of you. Tomorrow you can go get yourselves killed." "We can't stay," Rowan said. "Those bounty hunters will check the trading post and the church and move on. No one knows about this house." Sarah washed her hands. "You want to help her survive? She needs sleep, real sleep, and food that isn't hardtack." She pulled bread and cheese from a cupboard. "So you're staying. Argue, and I'll shoot you myself." Rowan looked at Eliza. She nodded. The exhaustion was catching up, dragging her under like a riptide. "Thank you," she said. "Thank me by living, and by reading every damn name in that ledger when you get to Cheyenne." Sarah's voice hardened. "Including my James, under." When she woke again, it was to under. When she woke again, it was to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Sarah was at the stove. Rowan sat at the table, cleaning his rifle with practiced movements. "She's awake," Sarah said without turning around. "How do you—" "Your breathing changed. Learned to notice that when James worked the night shift. Could tell the moment he woke up even with my back turned." She brought over a cup of coffee. "Drink. You need the strength." Eliza sat up carefully. The wound pulled but didn't scream. The infection must be responding to whatever Sarah had used. "What time is it?" "Passed on. You slept 12 hours. We should have left. You should have died 3 days ago. Count your blessings and drink your coffee." Eliza obeyed. The coffee was strong, bitter, perfect. "I've been thinking about your plan," Sarah said. "The public reading in Cheyenne." "It's not much of a plan." "It's suicide, which is why we're changing it." Rowan looked up. "We?" "You think I'm letting you two amateurs handle this alone? Barrett killed my husband. I've got a stake in this too." She sat down. "Here's what we do. Cheyenne's 3 days from here, but 2 days north is Fort Bridger. Army post. Federal jurisdiction." "Army won't care about mining fraud," Rowan said. "No, but they care about territorial corruption, about officials taking bribes, about murder on federal land." Sarah pulled the ledger over. "And according to this, Barrett bribed the territorial secretary to reclassify federal land as private territory. That's treason. That's something the Army investigates." Hope flickered in Eliza's chest. "You think they'd listen?" "I think they'd have to, especially if we bring them a witness." "What witness?" "You, the bookkeeper who saw it all."
Copied it all. Sarah's eyes were fierce. "You testify before an Army tribunal, they have to act. And once the Army starts investigating, Barrett can't make it disappear." Rowan nodded slowly. "It could work. It will work. If we do it right." Sarah stood. "I'm coming with you. Fort Bridger's commander is Colonel Hayes. His wife was my second cousin. He'll see me. He'll listen." "Sarah, this is dangerous." "I know. I'm old, not stupid." She started gathering supplies. "We leave in an hour. And this time, Eliza,
You ride in the wagon. No more heroics until you're healed. I can ride. You can barely stand. Stop arguing with everyone who's trying to keep you alive. Eliza wanted to protest. Wanted to insist she was fine, that she could handle it. But Sarah was right. And pride wouldn't stop a bullet or heal a wound. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Save your thanks for when we're not dead.
They left Little Creek at mid-morning. Sarah drove the wagon, Eliza hidden in the back beneath canvas and supplies. Rowan rode alongside, his eyes never still. The first sign of trouble came after 2 hours. "Riders behind us," Rowan said quietly. Sarah didn't turn around. "How many?" "5, moving fast." "Barrett's men?" "Can't tell yet." Eliza's hand found the derringer in her pocket. 2 shots. Point-blank range only. The riders came closer. Closer. Then they passed by without slowing, heading east toward Cheyenne. Eliza let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "They're looking for 2 people on horseback," Sarah said. "Not a widow with her nephew visiting." "Your nephew?" "That's our story if anyone asks. Rowan's my sister's boy from Montana, visiting for the summer." "And me?" "You're not here. Far as anyone knows, you're dead in a ditch somewhere." The lie felt flimsy, transparent, but it was all they had. They traveled through the afternoon. Sarah kept the wagon at a steady pace. Not too fast to draw attention, not too slow to seem suspicious. She stopped once to water the horses, to let Eliza stretch without being seen. "How much further to Fort Bridger?" Eliza asked. "We'll reach it tomorrow afternoon if we push." Sarah checked the horizon. "Question is whether Barrett's men figure out where we're going before we get there." "You think they will?" "I think Barrett didn't build an empire by being stupid. He'll have men at every army post within 100 miles by now." She climbed back onto the wagon. "Which is why we're going to need a distraction." "What kind of distraction?" Sarah's smile was grim. "The kind that makes Barrett think you're somewhere you're not." They made camp that night in a grove of aspens 20 miles from the fort. No fire, no lights. Just darkness and the sound of wind through leaves. Sarah explained her plan. "There's a mining camp east of here, Rollins Station. Rough place. Lots of men moving through. Lots of rumors." She drew a map in the dirt with a stick. "Tomorrow morning, Rowan rides there. Makes sure to be seen. Asks questions about Barrett. Acts like he's looking for information." "They'll know it's a trap," Rowan said. "Of course they will. That's the point. They follow him. We ride to Fort Bridger unmolested." "And when they catch me?" "You're a Union scout. Figure it out." Rowan looked at Eliza. "You comfortable with this?" No, she wasn't. The idea of splitting up, of Rowan drawing danger while she hid in a wagon, made her stomach twist. But comfortable didn't matter. Survival mattered. Truth mattered. "Do it," she said. Dawn came too fast. Rowan saddled his horse, checked his weapons, looked at Eliza for a long moment. "If something goes wrong, nothing's going wrong. If it does, you get to that fort. You testify. You make someone listen." His voice was quiet, certain. "That's what matters." "Rowan, promise me." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to be careful, to not be a hero, to come back alive. But promises were all they had in the face of impossible odds. "I promise." He nodded once. Then he was gone, riding east into the rising sun, while she and Sarah turned north toward Fort Bridger and the truth that might save them or condemn them all. The wagon rolled on, and behind them, in the distance, Eliza heard hoofbeats. Not ahead, not east where Rowan had gone,
behind them, coming fast. "Don't turn around," Sarah said. Her hand stayed steady on the reins, but her voice had gone tight. "How many?" Eliza peeked through a gap in the canvas. "3, maybe 4. Hard to tell through the dust." "Barrett's?" "I don't know." The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Sarah urged the horses faster, but a wagon couldn't outrun mounted men, and they both knew it. "Get down," Sarah ordered. "Under the supplies. Don't make a sound." Eliza burrowed beneath sacks of grain and blankets, her hand wrapped around the derringer. Her wounds screamed with every movement, but she bit down on the pain and stayed silent. The riders caught up. "Ma'am, hold up there!" Sarah pulled the wagon to a stop. Eliza could hear her shifting on the seat, could picture her arranging her face into something harmless and forgettable. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" "Sheriff's office, ma'am. We're looking for a fugitive. Woman, mid-20s, dark hair, traveling with a man." Eliza's heart hammered so hard she thought they'd hear it. "Haven't seen anyone like that. Just me heading to Fort Bridger to visit my nephew." "Your nephew?" "He's stationed there. Infantry." A pause. Eliza heard saddle leather creaking. Someone dismounting. "Mind if we check your wagon?" "I certainly do mind. What kind of fugitive are we talking about?" "Dangerous kind. Stole property from Barrett Mining. There's a reward." "Well, I haven't stolen anything, and I'm not harboring anyone. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to reach the fort before dark." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to insist." Footsteps approaching the wagon bed. Eliza's finger found the trigger. 2 shots. Point-blank range only. If they pulled back the canvas, if they found her, she'd have maybe 1 second to decide whether to shoot or surrender. "You insist all you want," Sarah said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "But the minute you put your hands on my property without a warrant, I'm reporting you to Colonel Hayes. He's my nephew's commanding officer, and he's not fond of territorial law overstepping federal jurisdiction." The footsteps stopped. "Hayes, you said?" "That's right. Colonel William Hayes. You want to explain to him why you're harassing an old woman on her way to visit family?" Another long pause. Then, "That won't be necessary, ma'am. Just doing our job." "Then do it somewhere else." The man remounted. The riders pulled back. But they didn't leave. Eliza heard them pacing the wagon, heard low voices conferring. They didn't believe Sarah. They were deciding what to do about it. Sarah must have sensed it too, because she said, loud enough for them to hear, "You boys plan to escort me the rest of the way? Because if you're going to follow me all the way to Fort Bridger, you might as well make yourselves useful and help if a wheel breaks." One of them laughed. "Just being cautious, ma'am." "Cautious looks a lot like harassment from where I'm sitting." "We'll be on our way. You have a safe journey now." They rode past, but Eliza could tell from the sound they weren't heading back the way they'd come. They were riding parallel, staying close enough to watch. Sarah waited until they were out of immediate earshot, then said quietly, "You can breathe now." Eliza emerged from under the supplies, gasping. "They're not gone." "I know. They're waiting to see if we deviate from the fort road. If we do, they'll know I lied. So we're trapped. We go to the fort, they follow. We run, they catch us. Not trapped, committed." Sarah snapped the reins. "We go to Fort Bridger. We walk through those gates. And we pray Colonel Hayes remembers his wife's second cousin. And if he doesn't, then we pray harder." They traveled the next 5 miles with unwanted escorts shadowing them just out of comfortable range. Eliza stayed hidden, but watched through gaps in the canvas. The riders made no pretense of subtlety. They wanted Sarah to know they were there, wanted her to crack, to panic, to make a mistake. Sarah didn't crack. She kept the wagon at a steady pace, hummed old hymns,
acted like she had all the time in the world and nothing to fear. But Eliza saw her hands white-knuckled on the reins, saw the tension in her shoulders. This woman had lost her husband to Barrett's greed, and now she was risking everything to avenge him. One wrong move, and she'd join him in an unmarked grave.
"Sarah," Eliza said quietly, "thank you. Save it. I need to say it. In case—"
"There's no in case. We're getting to that fort. You're testifying. Barrett's hanging." Sarah's voice was iron. Everything else is just noise. A gunshot cracked across the plains. Not close, maybe a quarter-mile east, then another. Then rapid fire. A firefight.
"Rowan," Eliza breathed.
The riders shadowing them wheeled their horses toward the sound. All three of them. They spurred hard and disappeared into the distance. Sarah didn't hesitate. She whipped the horses into a gallop. "Hold on!" The wagon lurched forward. Eliza grabbed onto the side rails as supplies shifted and slid around her. Her wound pulled viciously, but she gritted her teeth and held on. "What are you doing?"
"Rowan just bought us time. We're using it. But he's doing exactly what he needs to do. So are we."
More gunshots echoed across the plains. Eliza's chest constricted. She wanted to turn the wagon around, wanted to help him, wanted to do something other than run while he fought alone. But Sarah was right. Rowan had created this opening deliberately. Wasting it would make his sacrifice meaningless. The wagon flew over rough ground. Eliza's teeth rattled. The stitches pulled. She tasted blood where she'd bitten her tongue. Behind them, the gunfire continued, then stopped. The silence was worse. Fort Bridger appeared on the horizon just as the sun began its descent. Not large, maybe 200 soldiers at most, but the American flag snapping in the wind meant federal authority. It meant safety. It meant hope. Sarah slowed the wagon as they approached the gate. 2 sentries stepped out, rifles ready but not aimed. "State your business."
"Sarah Millbrook to see Colonel Hayes. It's urgent."
"The colonel doesn't see civilians without an appointment."
"Tell him it's about his wife's cousin. Tell him Sarah from Little Creek is here, and it's life or death."
The sentry looked skeptical, but something in Sarah's face made him pause. "Wait here." He disappeared inside. The other sentry kept watch. His eyes swept the plains behind them, looking for the trouble he could sense coming. Eliza shifted beneath the canvas.
"What if he doesn't remember you?" "He'll remember. His wife and I used to make preserves together every fall before—"
Sarah's voice caught.
"Before James died,"
the sentry returned. "Colonel says to bring her in."
"Thank you."
Sarah climbed down from the wagon. "My niece is in the back. She's not well. Can someone help her?" "Ma'am, the colonel said—" "I know what he said, but my niece has a bullet wound that's infected, and if she dies in your wagon yard, you'll have to explain it." Sarah pulled back the canvas. "Now help her, or get someone who will." The sentry looked at Eliza, saw the blood-stained clothes, the pallor, the way she couldn't quite sit up straight. "Get the medic," he said to his companion. Then to Sarah, "You're coming with me. Your niece stays under guard until the colonel decides what to do with you. That's acceptable." Sarah squeezed Eliza's hand once. "Tell them everything. Don't leave anything out." Then she was gone, following the sentry into the fort's main building, while Eliza was helped, half-carried, to the infirmary. The fort medic was young, competent, unimpressed by mystery.
"Who shot you?"
"Men who didn't want me to reach this fort."
"Why?"
"I have information about crimes, murder, fraud. I need to testify." He cut away Sarah's bandages, examined the wound with clinical detachment. "Infection's not as bad as I expected. You've been taking care of this?"
"As best I could."
"Who did the original stitching?"
"A doctor in Dry Hollow. then a widow in Little Creek. They knew what they were doing. He started cleaning the wound. You're lucky. Another few days untreated, and you'd have lost more than just blood. A soldier appeared in the doorway. Medic, Colonel wants the patient in his office when you're done. She's in no condition. Wasn't a request. The medic sighed, applied fresh bandages, helped Eliza into a clean shirt they kept for emergencies. Can you walk? I can try. That'll have to do. Colonel Hayes was exactly what Eliza expected. Military precision, no-nonsense demeanor, eyes that assessed threats in seconds. Sarah sat in a chair across from his desk. She looked small in the formal office, but her spine was straight and her jaw was set. "This is your niece?" Hayes asked as Eliza was brought in. "No, sir," Sarah said quietly. "That was a lie to get her through your gates alive. Her name is Eliza Whitmore. She's a fugitive from Barrett Mining. And she has evidence that will bring down the most corrupt operation in Wyoming territory." Hayes's expression didn't change. "You lied to gain entry to a federal military installation." "Yes, sir." "That's a court-martial offense if you were military. For a civilian, it's imprisonment." "I understand, sir. But if you'll give us 5 minutes to explain, you'll understand why we had no choice." Hayes leaned back in his chair. "I'm listening. You have 4 minutes left." Eliza stepped forward, pulled the ledger from the satchel she'd clutched through everything, laid it on his desk. Barrett Mining has been forging land deeds to seize federal homesteads, bribing territorial officials to reclassify federal land as private property, and murdering workers who protested unsafe conditions. Her voice was steady, clear. That ledger contains proof, names, dates, payment records, and a list of 23 men who were killed for demanding basic safety measures. Hayes opened the ledger, started reading. His expression remained neutral, but Eliza saw his jaw tighten, saw his finger trace down the columns of names and numbers. "Where did you get this?" "I was Barrett's bookkeeper in Cheyenne. I copied it before I ran." "And they've been hunting you since." "They shot me in the back while I was fleeing. A man named Rowan Cade saved my life. He's—" Her voice broke. "He's out there right now drawing Barrett's men away from us so we could reach you."
"Why me specifically?" Sarah spoke up. "Because you have federal jurisdiction, sir. Because you can't be bought or threatened by a territorial mining company. And because I knew you'd listen." Hayes closed the ledger. "Mrs. Millbrook, your husband's name is in here." "I know, sir." "Listed as transferred, but there was no transfer." "No, sir, there wasn't. James died in Shaft 12 after complaining about inadequate support beams. They told me he'd abandoned us, but he didn't. He was murdered, and I want justice." The silence stretched. Hayes stood, walked to the window, looked out at his fort, his command, his responsibility. "If even half of what's in this ledger is true, we're talking about a criminal conspiracy that reaches to the territorial governor's office." "It's all true," Eliza said. "Every word, every number. I copied it directly from Barrett's private records." "Can you testify to that under oath?" "Yes, sir." "Are you willing to face cross-examination? To have Barrett's lawyers try to tear your credibility apart?" "I'll face anything if it means those men get justice." Hayes turned back to them. "I'll send a wire to the territorial marshal and to the federal prosecutor in Cheyenne. This is going to create a firestorm." "Good," Sarah said. "Barrett's been operating with impunity for too long. But understand, the moment I send that wire, you become federal witnesses. You'll be targets. Barrett has resources. He has men. He won't let this stand." "He already tried to kill me once," Eliza said. "I'm still here." "What about your friend, this Rowan Cade?" Eliza's throat tightened. "I don't know where he is. We got separated." "How long ago?" "Maybe an hour. There was gunfire.
His distraction drew off the men following us. Hayes moved to the door. "Lieutenant, I need a patrol. 6 men. Armed. There was a firefight east of here within the last hour.
Find any survivors and bring them in."
"Yes, sir."
He turned back to Eliza and Sarah. "You'll stay here, under guard, for your own protection and because I need you alive to testify." He picked up the ledger. "I'm locking this in my safe. No one touches it until the federal prosecutor arrives."
"How long will that take?" Eliza asked.
3 days, maybe 4. Cheyenne's not close, and we need to make sure the prosecutor comes with enough marshals to protect you. 3 days, 4 days, an eternity for Rowan to survive on his own.
"Colonel, the man who saved me—"
"I'll do everything I can to find him. That's all I can promise." It wasn't enough, but it was all they had. They gave Eliza a bed in the infirmary, posted a guard outside, brought her food that tasted like nothing because her mind was miles away with a cowboy she'd known less than 2 weeks, but who'd become more important than her own survival. Sarah sat beside her.
"He'll be fine. He's a Union scout. He knows how to survive."
"What if they caught him?"
"They didn't."
"You don't know that."
"I know Rowan Cade was smart enough to create a diversion that got us through. He's smart enough to get himself out."
Sarah's hand covered Eliza's.
"Have faith."
But faith was hard when every minute felt like an hour, and every hour brought darker possibilities. The patrol returned 2 hours after full dark. Eliza heard the commotion from the infirmary, heard shouting, heard the medic being called. She tried to get up, and the guard pushed her back down. "Stay put, ma'am."
"What's happening?"
"Patrol's back."
"Did they find him? Did they find Rowan?"
The guard's face was carefully neutral.
"I don't know, ma'am."
Sarah appeared in the doorway. Her expression was unreadable. "Tell me," Eliza said. "They found signs of a fight. Blood, spent shells, but no bodies. Relief and terror tangled together."
"So he got away."
"Or they took him." The words hit like a fist. If Barrett's men had captured Rowan alive, they'd use him. As bait. As leverage. As a way to force Eliza to trade the ledger for his life. And she would. God help her, she would. "No," Sarah said, reading her face. "Whatever you're thinking, no. If they have him, you don't trade justice for one man, not even him. He saved my life. And he'd tell you the same thing I'm telling you. You testify. You see this through. That's what he risked everything for." Eliza wanted to scream, wanted to rage against the impossibility of it all. Wanted to tear down the walls that were keeping her safe while Rowan was out there alone, or captured, or dying. But Sarah was right. Rowan had made his choice. Had drawn danger away deliberately. Had bought them time with his own blood, if that's what it took. The least she could do was make it count.
"What do we do?"
she asked quietly. "We wait for the prosecutor. We prepare your testimony. We make sure when you stand in front of a judge, every word lands like a hammer." Sarah's voice was fierce. "We make Barrett pay for every life he's taken, including Rowan's if it comes to that." The next morning brought news that changed everything. Colonel Hayes summoned them to his office at dawn. His face was grim. "The territorial marshal responded to my wire." "And?" "He says there's no evidence to support an investigation. Says Eliza Whitmore is wanted for theft and fraud. Says the ledger is forged." The words took a moment to land. When they did, Eliza felt the floor drop out from under her. "That's impossible. I copied those numbers directly from Barrett's books." "I believe you, but the marshal doesn't, or can't, or won't." Hayes set the telegram on his desk. Barrett got to him first. "What about the federal prosecutor?" "No response yet.
which either means he's considering it carefully, Hayes paused, or he's already been bought. Sarah stood. Then we go over his head. Territorial governor, Washington. Someone has to. The territorial governor is listed in your ledger as receiving monthly payments from Barrett. He's not going to investigate himself.
The room felt like it was closing in. Eliza fought to breathe through the pressure in her chest. So we have nothing. The evidence doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. Barrett wins. Not nothing, Hayes said. You have me, and federal military authority. I can't prosecute Barrett, but I can protect you while we find someone who will. Who? Eliza's voice cracked. If the marshal's corrupt, and the prosecutor won't respond, and the governor's on Barrett's payroll, who's left? Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then, there's one option. Dangerous. Probably illegal. But it might work. What option? We bypass territorial authority entirely. Take this directly to the press. Sarah's eyes widened. You mean? I mean, we leak the ledger to every newspaper between here and Chicago. Make it so public that Barrett can't make it disappear. Force the federal government to investigate, because the story's too big to ignore. That'll take time, Eliza said. Weeks, maybe months before enough papers pick it up to matter. I know, but it's the only play we have left. He looked at both of them. Unless you have a better idea. Eliza's mind raced. Weeks of waiting. Weeks of being a target. Weeks of not knowing if Rowan was alive or dead. And then a thought struck her. Terrible. Desperate. Possibly brilliant. What if we don't wait for the newspapers to find us? She said slowly. What if we bring the story to them? How? Cheyenne, the territorial capital, Barrett's headquarters, the place where everyone knows his name and fears his power. Her voice grew stronger. We ride into Cheyenne. We walk into the biggest newspaper office in Wyoming, and we hand them the ledger in person, with full testimony, with witnesses, with everything. That's suicide, Sarah said. It's the only way to make noise loud enough that someone has to listen. Eliza turned to Hayes. You said I'd be a target. I'm already a target. But if I'm a target who dies after exposing Barrett publicly, it proves everything in the ledger is true. It makes me a martyr instead of a criminal. And if you die before you expose him, then at least I die trying, which is better than hiding while he destroys more lives. Hayes studied her for a long moment. You understand I can't officially support this. If you leave this fort, you're on your own. I understand. And you're willing to take that risk? I'm willing to take any risk if it means justice. He nodded slowly. Then, unofficially, I can give you an escort to the territorial border. After that, you're civilians on civilian business. That's all we need. Sarah grabbed Eliza's arm. This is insane. You can barely ride. Rowan's missing. Barrett has men everywhere. You won't make it 10 miles. Maybe not, but I have to try. Eliza met her eyes. Your husband deserves more than his name in a ledger that never sees daylight. My brother deserves more. All 23 of those men deserve more. They deserve you alive to tell their stories. Then I'd better stay alive. The determination in her own voice surprised her. She'd spent so long running, hiding, surviving. But somewhere between the bullet in her back and this moment, fear had transformed into fury. Barrett thought he could silence her, thought he could buy or threaten everyone who mattered. He was about to learn otherwise. Colonel Hayes gave them until noon to prepare. 2 hours to turn desperation into strategy. Sarah gathered supplies while Eliza tested her wound, pushed herself to walk the length of the infirmary without gasping. The pain was there,
but manageable. She could ride. She'd have to. The medic watched her with disapproval. "You're going to tear those stitches again." "Probably." "And you don't care." "I care, but I care about other things more." He handed her clean bandages. "Then at least take these, and laudanum for when the pain gets bad." "Laudanum makes me foggy. I need to stay sharp." "You need to stay alive." "Same thing." She was testing her arm's range of motion when the guard outside the infirmary called out, "Ma'am, someone's asking for you." Eliza's heart jumped. "Who?" "Says his name's Cade." She was moving before the guard finished speaking. Out the door, down the corridor, ignoring the protests from the medic and the sharp pull in her side. She burst into the main yard, and there he was. Rowan, alive, blood-crusted and limping, and supporting himself on a borrowed crutch, but alive. "You're—" the words caught in her throat. "Still here." His voice was rough, tired, but steady. "Harder to kill than I look." She wanted to run to him, wanted to throw her arms around him and confirm he was real and whole and breathing. But soldiers watched, and propriety held her back, and all she could do was stand there trembling. "What happened?" "Those men who followed us? I led them into rough country. Picked them off, one by one." He shifted his weight, winced. "Last one got lucky. Grazed my leg. But I got away before reinforcements arrived." "You've been riding for 2 days with a bullet wound." "Seems we make a habit of that." Sarah emerged from the supply building, saw Rowan, and her face cracked into something like relief. "You stubborn fool." "Nice to see you too, Sarah." "Can you ride?" "Do I have a choice?" "No." "Then I can ride." Hayes appeared, took in Rowan's condition with a practiced eye. "You need medical attention." "I need to get Eliza to Cheyenne. I'll heal later." "Cheyenne's 3 days hard riding. You won't last 1 day in your condition." "Then I'll die in the saddle, but I'm not letting her go alone." Eliza stepped forward. "Rowan, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." His eyes met hers, and everything else fell away. "I started this when I pulled that bullet out of your back. I'm seeing it through." Hayes studied them both. "You're either the bravest people I've met, or the stupidest." "Can't it be both?" Sarah asked. "Apparently." He gestured toward the infirmary. "Get that leg treated. You leave in 2 hours with a 6-man escort. They'll take you to the territorial border and no further. After that, you're on your own." "Understood," Eliza said. The medic worked on Rowan's leg with the same detached efficiency he'd shown Eliza. The bullet had carved a furrow through muscle, but missed the bone. He cleaned it, stitched it, wrapped it tight. "You're both insane," he muttered. "We've established that," Rowan said. When the medic finished, Rowan tried to stand and nearly went down. Eliza caught him. "Steady." "I'm fine." "You're not. None of us are. But we're doing this anyway." His hand covered hers where she gripped his arm. "Eliza, if this goes wrong, it won't. If it does, I want you to know." He stopped, started again. "That night I found you bleeding in Red Canyon. I thought I was just stopping an injustice. Didn't know it would lead here. Didn't know you'd—" Another pause. "Didn't know you'd become someone I couldn't walk away from." Her chest tightened. "Rowan, I'm not asking for anything. Just needed to say it." She should respond. Should tell him that somewhere between the fever dreams and the desperate flight and the impossible odds, he'd become her anchor, her reason to keep fighting. But words felt inadequate. So instead she said, "Don't die before Cheyenne." "Same to you." It was enough. It had to be. They rode out at noon. 6 soldiers from Fort Bridger, Hayes's best men. Eliza and Rowan on horses that had been rested and fed. Sarah in the wagon with the supplies and the ledger locked in a metal box Hayes had provided. 3 days to Cheyenne if you push, Hayes said, as they prepared to leave. But Barrett knows you're coming. He'll have men on every road. Let him, Eliza said. We're not hiding anymore. No, but don't mistake courage for invincibility. He handed her a sealed letter. If you make it to the territorial capital, take this to the editor of the Wyoming Tribune. Name's Marcus Webb. Tell him I sent you. He's one of the few newspapermen who can't be bought. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just stay alive long enough to make this count. They rode. The first day passed without incident. The soldiers kept tight formation, alert for trouble that didn't materialize. They made camp that night in a dried riverbed, posting double guards. Eliza couldn't sleep. Her wound throbbed. Her mind raced with everything that could go wrong. Rowan sat nearby, his injured leg stretched out, cleaning his rifle by firelight. You should rest, she said. So should you. Can't. Me neither. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Then Rowan said, Tell me about your brother. The real Thomas, not the name in a ledger. The request surprised her. Why? Because when you testify, you'll need to make them see him as a person, not a statistic. And you can't do that unless you remember him that way yourself. He was right. She'd spent so long focused on justice that Thomas had become abstract. A cause, a reason, not a person. He was terrible at checkers, she said quietly. Couldn't plan more than one move ahead. But he'd play anyway, because he liked the time together more than winning. A smile tugged at her lips. And he had this laugh, loud, infectious. You couldn't help but join in, even if you didn't know what was funny.
He sounds like someone worth knowing. He was. Is. Even now. She looked at the fire. Barrett took his life, but he didn't take who Thomas was. That's still real, still matters. Then make them see that. When you stand in front of that editor, when you testify, make them see Thomas laughing. Make them see all 23 of those men as people who deserved better. What if it's not enough? It will be, because you'll make it enough. His faith in her was terrifying and galvanizing in equal measure. One of the soldiers called out softly, "Riders approaching, 2 of them." Everyone went still, hands on weapons, eyes on the darkness beyond the firelight. 2 men rode in slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "We're looking for Eliza Whitmore," one called out. The soldiers raised their rifles. "State your business." "We have a message from Barrett Mining." Eliza stood. "I'm listening." The man reached into his coat slowly, pulled out an envelope. "Mr. Barrett wants you to know he's willing to negotiate. You return his property, he drops all charges. You get to go home, live your life." "And the 23 men who died?" "Unfortunate accidents. Mining's dangerous work." "Murders, not accidents." The man shrugged. "Call them what you want. But Mr. Barrett's offering you a way out. Take it while you can." "Tell Barrett I'll see him in Cheyenne." "He figured you'd say that." The man's smile was cold. "Which is why he wanted you to know he has your sister." The world stopped. "What?" "Madeline Whitmore, school teacher in Philadelphia. Mr. Barrett's men picked her up 3 days ago. She's comfortable, safe, for now." Rage and terror crashed together. "If he hurts her, he won't, as long as you're reasonable. You want her back? Trade the ledger. Simple." Eliza's hand found her derringer. You're lying.
Am I? He pulled out a second envelope, tossed it to the ground. See for yourself. One of the soldiers retrieved it, handed it to Eliza.
Inside was a photograph. Recent. Madeline sitting in a chair, holding today's newspaper, her eyes wide. Frightened, but alive. You have 24 hours, the man said. After that, Mr. Barrett can't guarantee her continued safety. Mining accidents happen all the time, even in Philadelphia. They rode away before anyone could respond. Eliza stood frozen, the photograph trembling in her hands. Madeline, her sister, the one person she'd tried to protect by not telling her anything. And Barrett had found her anyway. Sarah took the photograph gently, studied it. This doesn't change anything. He has my sister. I know. If I don't give him the ledger, 23 families lost someone to Barrett's greed. Your family's not the only one suffering. Sarah's voice was hard, but not unkind. You trade that ledger, Madeline lives. But everyone Barrett killed stays dead. Every future worker who dies in his mines dies because you chose one life over justice.
She's my sister. And James was my husband. And I'm still telling you, don't trade. Rowan spoke up. There might be another way. Both women turned to him. Barrett's in Cheyenne. His men are in Philadelphia. That's a week's travel between them, even by train. He pointed at the photograph. This was taken 3 days ago. That newspaper's dated. But it takes time to transport a photograph from Philadelphia to Wyoming. Understanding dawned. You think she's not in Philadelphia anymore. I think if Barrett's smart, and he is, he moved her closer. Somewhere he can control. Somewhere he can use her as leverage when you arrive in Cheyenne. Where? The mines. Has to be. Remote, secure. Lots of places to hide someone. Sarah nodded slowly. Shaft 12. Where he buried the bodies. Where he'd bury one more if he had to. The thought made Eliza sick, but it also meant something crucial. If she's in Shaft 12, she's 40 miles from Cheyenne, not 1,000 miles away in Philadelphia. Still guarded, Rowan said, still a fortress, but reachable. You're thinking we split up, Sarah said. Some of us go to Cheyenne, some go after Madeline. It's the only play that addresses both problems. One of the soldiers interrupted. Colonel Hayes ordered us to escort you to the border. Nothing about raiding a mining operation. Then escort us to the border. What we do after that is our business. The soldier looked uncomfortable, but didn't argue. Eliza's mind raced. Save her sister or expose Barrett. The impossible choice. Except Rowan was right. Maybe it didn't have to be either or. Maybe it could be both. How many men would Barrett have guarding her? Depends, Rowan said. If he thinks we're coming, a lot. If he thinks we'll trade the ledger, maybe just a few. So we make him think we're coming to trade. How? We send him a message. Tell him we're ready to negotiate. Ask for proof Madeline's alive and well. Stall for time while we figure out where she is and how to get her out. Sarah frowned. That's not much of a plan.
It's better than nothing.
Barely.
But they didn't have time for perfect plans. They had 24 hours, and every minute they spent debating was a minute Madeline spent in danger. We keep moving toward Cheyenne, Eliza said. Tomorrow morning, we send word to Barrett that we're willing to talk. While he's preparing for a negotiation that will never happen, we find Madeline. And then? Then we get her out, and we expose him, and we pray we're fast enough to do both. It was desperate, reckless, probably doomed to fail, but it was all they had. They rode hard through the second day,
crossed into territorial land as the sun reached its peak. The soldiers turned back as ordered, leaving Eliza, Rowan, and Sarah to face the last 40 miles alone. "This is where it gets dangerous," Rowan said. "As opposed to the safe part we just finished?" Sarah asked dryly. Despite everything, Eliza almost smiled. They found a trading post 10 miles inside the border. Rowan went in, while the women waited outside, purchased supplies, and asked careful questions about the mines. He came back with bread, dried beef, and information. Shaft 12's been closed for 3 months. Official story is it's being reinforced after a partial collapse. "Convenient," Sarah muttered. "Clerk says there's still guards posted. Says Barrett's storing valuable equipment down there." "Or valuable hostages," Rowan nodded. "We need to confirm she's there before we commit to a rescue." "How?" "Someone goes in quiet, scouts the operation, counts guards, finds where they're keeping her." "I'll go," Eliza said. "No, you won't. You're injured, and you're the one Barrett wants most. You get caught, this whole thing falls apart." "Then you go." "I'm injured too, and not exactly stealthy with a crutch." He looked at Sarah. "It has to be you." Sarah straightened. "I'm 60 years old." "You're also someone they won't suspect. A widow looking for work, or selling preserves, or any of a dozen reasons an old woman might be near a mining operation." "They'll recognize me. Those men who stopped our wagon." "We're looking for you with Eliza. Alone, you're nobody. Just another struggling widow trying to survive." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, "I do make excellent preserves." It took 2 hours to prepare. Sarah changed into her plainest dress, packed a basket with jars of preserves she'd made months ago and kept in the wagon. Became someone forgettable. "You see anything suspicious, you leave," Rowan said. "Don't be a hero."
Heroes get killed. I plan to survive. She climbed onto the wagon seat. "I'll be back before dark. If I'm not—" "You will be." She snapped the reins and was gone. Eliza and Rowan waited in a copse of trees with sightlines to the road. Silent. Tense. "She'll be fine," Rowan said. "You don't know that." "No, but worrying won't change it. Worrying's all I can do right now." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Tell me about Madeline. What's she like?" Eliza understood what he was doing. Distracting her. Keeping her mind from spiraling into dark places. "She's practical. Organized. Everything I'm not." A small smile. "When we were kids, I'd dream up adventures and she'd plan them. Make lists, pack supplies. Turn my chaos into something that actually worked." "Sounds like you need each other." "We do. Did. Before I left for Wyoming and stopped writing, and let her think everything was fine when it wasn't." Guilt twisted in her chest. "She probably hates me."
"She doesn't hate you. She's terrified for you. There's a difference."
"How do you know?"
"Because that's what family does. They worry. They forgive. They show up when it matters."
His voice carried weight she didn't understand.
"Rowan."
"My brother. The one who died in Andersonville." He stared at something distant. "We fought before the war. Stupid argument about nothing important. And I left angry. Thought I'd apologize later. Thought we had time." Pause. "We didn't. And I never got to tell him I was sorry. Never got to tell him he mattered more than whatever we were fighting about."
"I'm sorry."
"Don't be sorry. Just promise me something."
"What?"
"When we get Madeline out, and we will get her out, you tell her everything. The truth. The fear. The reason you kept her in the dark. No more secrets."
"What if she doesn't understand?"
"Then you help her understand. But you don't let pride or fear or guilt keep you from saying what needs to be said.
His eyes met hers, because time isn't guaranteed, and regret's a hard thing to carry. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They waited. The sun crawled across the sky. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour felt like eternity. Finally, as shadows lengthened, Sarah's wagon appeared on the road. She drove straight to their hiding place. Her face was pale, but composed. "She's there." Relief and dread hit simultaneously. "You saw her?" "Briefly. They have her in the foreman's quarters. Above ground, thank God. But guarded. 2 men outside the door. At least 4 more patrolling the perimeter." "6 men total?" "That I saw. Could be more inside the mine office." Rowan swore quietly. 6 against 3. And 2 of us can barely stand." 7 against 3, Sarah corrected. "You're forgetting Madeline. If we can get her a weapon—" "She's a school teacher. She's also Eliza's sister, which means she's got fight in her, even if she doesn't know it yet." Eliza's mind raced through scenarios. 6 guards minimum. Unknown layout. Her sister as a hostage. The odds were terrible, but they'd faced terrible odds before. "We go in after dark," she said. 3 approaches. Sarah creates a distraction on the east side. Rowan takes the high ground with his rifle, picks off the perimeter guards. I go in through the main entrance, get to Madeline, get her out. "That's not a plan," Rowan said. "That's 3 different ways to get killed." "You have something better?" He didn't. None of them did. So they prepared, checked weapons, rehearsed timing, tried not to think about everything that could go wrong. As the sun set, Eliza loaded the Derringer. 2 shots, point-blank range only. Maybe it would be enough. Maybe it wouldn't. But 24 hours was almost up, and Barrett would be expecting a response. He'd get one, just not the one he wanted. Full dark came with a wind that carried the smell of dust and old metal. The mine sat like a scar on the landscape, its buildings black against blacker sky. 2 lanterns burned outside the foreman's quarters, where Madeline was being held. Eliza checked her Derringer one last time. 2 shots. She'd need to make them count. "Remember," Rowan said quietly, "Sarah starts the distraction. I take the perimeter guards. You get in, get Madeline, get out. No heroics. What if something goes wrong? Then we improvise." He touched her shoulder. "But Eliza, if you have to choose between your sister and the ledger, you save your sister. Justice means nothing if we lose ourselves getting it." She wanted to argue, wanted to say the ledger was worth any price. But looking at his face, seeing the weight of his own brother's death still there, she understood. "Okay." Sarah climbed onto the wagon, her face set with grim determination. "Give me 10 minutes to get into position. When you hear the explosion, move fast." "Explosion?" Eliza asked. "Turns out I'm good with dynamite, too." Sarah's smile was fierce. "James taught me before he died. Said a woman should know how to handle herself in rough country." She drove off before either of them could respond. Rowan positioned himself on a ridge overlooking the mine. His rifle rested steady despite his injured leg. "I count 6 guards, 2 on Madeline's door, 4 walking the perimeter. Those are just the ones we can see." "I know, which means we're walking into a trap or a miracle. Won't know which until we're already in." Eliza crouched beside him, watched the guards pace their routes with bored efficiency. Men doing a job. Men who probably had families. Men who'd chosen Barrett's money over asking questions. "Rowan?" "Yeah?" "Thank you. For everything. For saving me when you didn't have to. For believing me. For—" Her voice caught. "For being someone worth fighting alongside." He looked at her. Really looked at her. And for a moment, the mission fell away.
and there was just the two of them on a ridge in Wyoming territory, about to do something impossibly dangerous. Eliza Whitmore, you're the most stubborn, brave, infuriating woman I've ever met. His voice was soft. And if we survive this, I'm going to tell you exactly what that means to me.
Tell me now.
No, because now we need to focus on staying alive. He checked his rifle. But later, I promise. The explosion ripped through the night. Sarah had positioned dynamite near the mine's powder storage. The blast lit up the sky like a second sun. Guards shouted, ran toward the fire. Chaos erupted exactly as planned. Rowan fired. The first perimeter guard dropped. The second. Clean shots. No hesitation. Eliza ran. Her wounds screamed. Her legs threatened to give out. But she pushed through pain toward the foreman's quarters, where two guards still stood at the door. They saw her coming, raised their weapons. She dove behind a water trough as bullets splintered wood above her head. "There's a woman! Shoot her!" More gunfire, but not at her. Rowan picking off targets from his ridge, keeping the guards pinned. Eliza waited for a pause in the shooting. Then she stood and aimed her derringer. "I'm Eliza Whitmore, the woman your boss has been hunting. You want the reward? It's right here." The guards hesitated, looked at each other. "Drop your weapons and walk away, or I put a bullet in the first one who moves." "You got 2 shots," one of them said. "There's 2 of us, plus more coming." "Then I'd better make them count." The standoff stretched, seconds feeling like hours. Then Sarah's wagon came barreling around the corner, scattering guards like pins. She drove it straight at the foreman's quarters and jumped off at the last second as it crashed into the building's support beam. The structure shuddered. The guards scattered. Eliza didn't wait. She ran for the door, kicked it open, and found herself face to face with a man she'd never seen before. But she knew him anyway. Garrett, Barrett's Enforcement Division Chief, the man Thomas had mentioned in his last letter. He held a gun to Madeline's head. "Hello, Miss Whitmore. We've been expecting you." Madeline looked terrified but unharmed. Her eyes met Eliza's, and something broke in both of them. "Let her go," Eliza said. "I don't think so. You're going to put down that gun. Then you're going to hand over the ledger. Then maybe, your sister lives through this." "The ledger's in Cheyenne, at the newspaper office. I already gave it to them." Garrett's expression flickered. "Liar." "Marcus Webb at the Wyoming Tribune. He's had it since yesterday. He's running the story tomorrow whether I'm alive or dead." The lie came smooth and easy. "So killing me changes nothing. Killing her changes nothing. It's over." "You're bluffing." "Am I? Then shoot her. See what happens when the Tribune prints 23 names of men your boss murdered, and the sister of one of them dies the same day?" Eliza's voice was ice. "See how that looks to federal investigators." Garrett's hand wavered. Madeline didn't. She drove her elbow back into his stomach, twisted away from the gun, and dropped to the floor in one smooth motion. Eliza fired. The Derringer's first shot caught Garrett in the shoulder. He stumbled back, raised his own weapon. Rowan appeared in the doorway and shot him before he could pull the trigger. Garrett went down. For a moment, no one moved. Then Madeline was on her feet, and Eliza caught her, and they were holding each other and shaking and crying and alive. "You came," Madeline whispered. "I knew you'd come. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you about Thomas, about everything." "Later. Tell me later. Right now we need to run." She was right. The explosion's chaos wouldn't last forever. Guards would regroup, and Barrett would send more men. Sarah burst in. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before they organize. Move!" They ran. Madeline supported Eliza. Eliza supported Rowan. Sarah led them to horses she'd hidden behind the mine office. They mounted and rode hard into darkness, with shouts and gunfire fading behind them. They didn't stop until dawn, didn't speak until they'd put 20 miles between themselves and the mine. Finally, in a canyon that offered cover, they dismounted and collapsed. Eliza's stitches had torn again. Blood soaked through her shirt, but she didn't care, because Madeline was safe, and that was all that mattered. "Let me see," Madeline said, her schoolteacher voice cutting through exhaustion. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding, and you look half dead. Let me see." Eliza let her. Madeline cleaned and rebandaged the wound with capable hands, her mouth tight with disapproval. "When were you going to tell me you'd been shot?" "When it seemed relevant." "And Thomas? When were you going to tell me our brother was murdered?" The question hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. "I was going to tell you after I had proof, after I could give you justice along with the truth." "I didn't need justice. I needed my sister to trust me enough to share her grief." Madeline's voice cracked. "You carried this alone for months. Let me think. Thomas abandoned us. Let me think you were just busy with work. I was trying to protect you." "I know, but Eliza, I'm not a child. I'm your sister, and I deserve to know." She was right. Rowan had been right. All the protection in the world meant nothing if it came at the cost of truth and trust. "I'm sorry," Eliza said. "I was wrong. About all of it." Madeline pulled her into a hug. "Tell me now. Tell me everything." So she did. The ledger, the names, Thomas's last letter, and what he'd discovered. The forged deeds and murdered workers, and corruption that reached all the way to the territorial governor. When she finished, Madeline was crying, but her jaw was set. "What do we do now?" "We go to Cheyenne. We take this to the newspaper. We make sure everyone knows what Barrett did." "They'll try to stop us." "They'll fail." Sarah spoke up from where she was tending the horses. "There's another problem. You told Garrett the ledger was already at the Tribune. He'll send men there to confirm. When they find out you lied, then we'd better make it true. How far to Cheyenne?" "Half a day if we push hard." "Then we push hard." Rowan stood, tested his leg, and nodded. "I can ride, but Eliza, you're in no shape." "I'm in the exact shape I need to be in. Alive, conscious, and holding proof." She pulled the satchel close. "This ledger gets to Marcus Webb today, or everything we've done means nothing." They rode through the morning and into afternoon, past homesteads and trading posts, and people who stared at 4 bloody, exhausted riders like they were harbingers of something terrible. They were. Cheyenne appeared on the horizon as the sun began its descent. The territorial capital. Barrett's stronghold. The place where he'd built his empire on blood and bribes. The place where it would end. "Wyoming Tribune's on 4th Street, Sarah said. "Right in the middle of town. No way to approach without being seen." "Good," Eliza said. "I want to be seen. I want everyone to watch me walk through those doors." "Barrett will have men waiting." "Let him." They rode into Cheyenne at a walk. Deliberate. Visible. A statement. People stopped to stare. Whispered. Pointed. There was the woman Barrett had put a price on. There was the cowboy who'd saved her. There was the widow and the sister, and the proof of things everyone suspected, but no one dared name. The Tribune office sat between a bank and a dry goods store. Its windows faced the street. Its doors stood open. Eliza dismounted. Her legs nearly buckled, but Madeline caught her. "Together," Madeline said. "Together." They walked toward the door. Rowan and Sarah flanked them, creating a barrier between Eliza and the crowd that had started to gather. A man stepped out of the bank, expensive suit, cold eyes. One of Barrett's lawyers. "Miss Whitmore, I'm authorized to offer you a final settlement. $20,000, a full pardon, safe passage east. All you have to do is hand over the ledger and sign a statement saying everything in it was falsified." "No. Think about your sister. Think about your future." "I am thinking about them. That's why the answer's no." She stepped past him. He grabbed her arm. "You're making a mistake." Rowan's hand closed on the lawyer's wrist. "Let go." "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me plenty." "Now let go before I break your arm." The lawyer released Eliza, stepped back. "Mr. Barrett warned me you'd be unreasonable. That's unfortunate." "What's unfortunate is your boss thinking he could buy his way out of 23 murders." The crowd had grown. Miners, shopkeepers, women with children, people who'd lived under Barrett's shadow for years. They were listening. Eliza raised her voice. "My name is Eliza Whitmore. I was a bookkeeper for Barrett Mining, and I have proof that James Barrett has been forging land deeds, bribing officials, and murdering workers who demanded safe conditions." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "My brother Thomas was one of those workers. He's buried in an unmarked grave in Shaft 12, along with 22 other men whose families were told they'd run off or been transferred." She held up the satchel. "This ledger contains their names, the dates they died, and the payments Barrett made to keep those deaths secret." "That's slander!" the lawyer shouted. "It's truth, and in about 5 minutes it's going to be public record." She turned to enter the Tribune office. The doors slammed shut. A man appeared in the window, young, scared. "We're closed. Marcus Webb was supposed to be expecting me." "Mr. Webb is unavailable. Come back tomorrow." Sarah pushed forward. "Open these doors right now or I'll—" "He can't," Rowan said quietly. He pointed to the alley beside the building. 2 of Barrett's men stood there, weapons visible. "They've got someone in there, holding the staff hostage probably." Eliza felt the trap closing. Of course Barrett had thought of this. Of course he'd covered every approach. But he'd made one mistake. He'd assumed she'd come quietly, secretly, like someone who still feared him. She turned back to the crowd. "Barrett's men are holding the newspaper office. They're trying to stop this story from being published." "Why?" "Because everything I've said is true." She opened the satchel, pulled out the ledger. 23 names, 23 families who deserve justice, and one man who thought he could buy silence forever. Someone in the crowd called out, "My cousin's name in there?" "What was his name?" "Robert Chen, worked Shaft 8, disappeared 2 years back." Eliza paged through, found it. Robert Chen, listed as transferred March 1884. No transfer destination. No further records. She looked up. "He's in here." A woman pushed forward. "What about Samuel Brooks, my husband?" Eliza found that name too. Samuel Brooks, transferred September 1883. Same notation. No destination. More voices. More names. More families who'd been told lies and believed them because they had no choice. And Eliza read each one, made each name real, made each death matter. The crowd grew larger, angrier, grief turning to fury, turning to demand. "Show us the proof! Let us see the ledger! Make Barrett answer!" The lawyer tried to shout over them, tried to regain control, but he was one voice against dozens becoming hundreds. And then Colonel Hayes arrived. He rode in with 20 soldiers, federal authority made manifest. He dismounted and walked straight to Eliza. "Miss Whitmore, I received word you might need assistance." Relief crashed through her. "They're holding the Tribune office." "So I see." He turned to his men. "Clear that building. Anyone resisting is arrested for obstruction of federal investigation." The soldiers moved with precision. The men in the alley tried to flee, but were surrounded and taken. The doors to the Tribune opened, and staff emerged, shaken but unharmed. A man in his 50s, ink-stained and furious, came out. "I'm Marcus Webb. Someone better explain what in hell is happening to my newspaper." Hayes handed him the sealed letter. "Colonel William Hayes, Fort Bridger. I sent word ahead that Miss Whitmore would be arriving with evidence of federal crimes." Webb read the letter, looked at Eliza. "You're the bookkeeper who copied Barrett's records." "Yes, sir." "And you have proof of murder and corruption." "Yes, sir." "Then get in here. We're running this story tonight if I have to set type myself." The next 6 hours passed in a blur. Webb read the ledger cover to cover, asked questions, verified details. His staff scrambled to set type while he wrote the story with a fury that matched Eliza's own. "This is going to destroy him," Webb said. "You understand that? Barrett built this territory. He's got influence in Washington. Publishing this will start a war." "Then we'd better win it," Eliza said. Madeline sat beside her, holding her hand. Rowan stood guard at the door. Sarah made coffee and kept watch, and smiled like someone who'd waited years for this moment. Night fell. The presses started running. The sound was beautiful. Mechanical thunder that meant truth becoming permanent, becoming undeniable, becoming justice. Webb brought them the first printed copy. The headline took up half the front page. "Mass Murder in the Mines. Barrett Mining accused of killing 23 workers. Bookkeeper provides evidence of systematic corruption." Below it, every name, every date, every detail, and a photograph Webb had taken. Eliza and Madeline standing together. Eliza holding the ledger, both of them exhausted and bloodied and unbowed. "It's perfect," Eliza whispered. "It's the truth," Webb said. "And by morning, every newspaper from here to Chicago will be running the same story." By midnight, the streets filled with people buying papers, reading, talking. The whispers Barrett had counted on to protect him, becoming shouts he couldn't silence. By dawn, federal marshals arrived from 3 territories. Hayes had sent telegrams. The story had reached Washington. The machinery of justice, slow and grinding, had finally begun to turn. And at noon, James Barrett was arrested in his own office by men who couldn't be bought or threatened. Eliza watched it happen from Webb's window. Watched the man who'd murdered her brother, who'd stolen lives and land and futures, being led away in chains. It wasn't enough. Nothing could be enough. Thomas was still dead. 22 others were still buried in unmarked graves. But it was something. It was justice beginning. 3 weeks later, Eliza stood at the edge of Shaft 12 with Madeline, Sarah, and Rowan. The federal investigators had found the bodies, all 23, had brought them up into sunlight and dignity, had given them caskets and markers and the acknowledgement they deserved. Thomas's marker was simple: his name, his dates, and words Eliza had chosen. He spoke truth when silence was easier. Madeline laid flowers. Sarah laid her hand on James's marker next to Thomas. Rowan stood quiet, his own brother's memory present in the ceremony. "It's not finished," Eliza said. "Barrett's trial could take years. His lawyers will fight every charge." "Let them fight," Sarah said. "We've already won the part that matters. Everyone knows the truth now. Every family knows their loved ones didn't abandon them, didn't run off.
were murdered by a man who valued silver more than lives. "And Barrett will hang for it," Webb had told them that morning. The evidence was overwhelming.
The public outcry was too loud to ignore. Justice might be slow, but it was coming. They stood together as the sun set over Wyoming territory. 4 people who'd been strangers weeks ago, who'd found each other in violence and desperation, who'd chosen to fight when surrender would have been easier. "What happens now?" Madeline asked. "I'm going back to Little Creek," Sarah said. "There's a town full of widows who need help filing proper claims against Barrett's estate. And I'm apparently good at fighting mining companies." Madeline smiled. "I'm staying in Cheyenne. The Territorial School Board needs someone who understands corruption and how to teach children to recognize it. Turns out I qualify." They looked at Rowan and Eliza. "I'm rebuilding my ranch," Rowan said. "Figure after everything, I've earned some peace." He paused. "But I could use help, if someone's interested." Eliza met his eyes, saw the question there, the hope, the careful offer of something more than partnership in battle. "I'm interested," she said quietly, "if the offer includes finally hearing what you promised to tell me when we survived." His smile was slow, genuine. "It does." They left the graves as darkness fell, left Thomas and the others to rest in earth that had been consecrated by truth and marked by justice. Eliza looked back once, saw the markers standing straight, saw her brother's name visible in the last light. "Goodbye, Thomas," she whispered. "You were right. Someone did listen. Someone always listens if you're willing to speak loud enough." 6 months later, Eliza stood in Rowan's rebuilt barn, their barn now, watching the first snow of winter fall across the ranch. The bullet wound had healed to a scar. The nightmares had faded. The weight she'd carried for so long had eased into something manageable. Barrett's trial had ended 3 days ago. Guilty on all counts. Execution scheduled for spring. 23 families had received compensation from his seized assets. Not enough to replace what they'd lost, but something. Madeline wrote weekly from Cheyenne. Her school was growing. Her students were learning that truth mattered more than power, that one person standing up could change everything. Sarah had filed 63 claims against Barrett Mining, had won 58 so far. The remaining mines operated under federal oversight now. Workers had protections, safety standards, unions. And Rowan had kept his promise, had told her, in the quiet of a Wyoming evening much like this one, that saving her life had become the most important thing he'd ever done. That fighting beside her had shown him what partnership could mean. That he'd spent 8 years building a life alone and discovered he didn't want to be alone anymore. She'd told him the same, had admitted that somewhere between the bullet and the testimony and the justice, she'd fallen in love with a cowboy who'd chosen to stand when standing was dangerous. They'd married in the spring. Small ceremony. Sarah and Madeline and Colonel Hayes and Marcus Webb. People who'd earned the right to witness their happiness. The barn door opened. Rowan came in carrying firewood, snow dusting his shoulders. "Getting cold out there. Good thing we've got a warm house to go back to." He set down the wood, crossed to her, pulled her close. "You thinking about Thomas?" "Always. But not sad anymore. Just grateful." She looked up at him. "Grateful he had the courage to speak up. Grateful I had the courage to finish what he started. Grateful you had the courage to help a stranger who had every reason to die and chose to live instead. Not a stranger anymore. No, not anymore." They stood in the barn as snow fell and Wyoming grew quiet, and somewhere in Cheyenne, a printing press was running another story about justice delayed, but not denied. Eliza Whitmore had been shot in the back while fleeing, had been left for dead, had been hunted across territories. But a rugged cowboy had stepped in, had pulled her from the dust, had believed her when no one else would, had stood with her when standing meant risking everything. And together, they'd changed more than just her fate. They'd changed a territory, changed what was possible, changed the calculation that said one person couldn't matter against money and power and corruption. Because sometimes, justice didn't arrive with a badge. Sometimes it rode in from a ridge. Sometimes it was carried by a bookkeeper with a ledger, and a cowboy with a rifle, and a widow with dynamite, and a schoolteacher with courage. Sometimes it was just people choosing to do right when doing wrong was easier. And that choice, that simple, terrible, beautiful choice, changed everything. The snow fell, the fire burned, and Eliza Whitmore, survivor and witness and victor, finally let herself rest. Because the fight was over, and truth had won.